Hey everybody, John Gruber here, Maryland K-12. My final point here on this book that by Chris Papps from Fox 45. The most of it was around grade changing, because some of it that he did was that he talked a lot about was about, or there's one or two chapters about discipline and, the bullying and all that stuff that goes on. And let me say this about that. What people outside of education don't understand is that there is always another side to these stories. Everybody's ready to go on social media, ready to call Chris Papps at 45 and talk about all the horrible things that this school has done to their child. And in some cases, it's true. And by golly, if it's true, we need to hold those kids accountable. But in many cases, when the school gets a hold of this stuff and they try and investigate it, and what they get is they get a handful of other kids, or they get the other kid, depending on how many are involved, who say, I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't do this, we didn't do that. And the schools have no proof, no anything. Or what you get is you get a series of information, or you get a series of texts and documents that have been going both ways. And you got, groups of 3-4 kids who are constantly going back and forth and harassing and calling each other names and threatening each other names. And the one kid saying, I'm being bullied. And then the other kid saying, I'm being bullied. And it's just a big mess. As a matter of fact, the one example he used when he said they said they talked to some other people, and they said, well, this child was at one time or not the aggressor as well. And I know everybody hears that and says, well, my child stood up for himself finally and he got suspended. Folks, it's a very, very difficult situation. And in most cases, and I've done that, I did that for about 15 years. I've been in the middle of more conflicts than you can imagine. I've seen more texts and I've dealt this more than you would ever know. And I'm telling you, in every single case, with the exception of about 2 in my time, there was always something going back and forth from both sides. Now, who initially started it, who knows? But it is a very difficult thing to do. And on top of that, teachers are not investigators. Teachers do not have subpoena power. They can't go through kids' phones and do a digital analysis of their phone and all that. So there's a lot more to this than that. And like I said, I've been in the middle of a lot of them, and a lot of my friends have. My good friend, the controversial counselor, he and I have been through the battles together on this stuff. And there's almost always more to the story than meets the eye. And on top of that, even if it's not, if you can't prove it or have some kind of proof, it's almost impossible to act on. So the schools are behind the 8 ball in this. And that's something that schools deal with. So I hope that just provides a little perspective on what's going on. It's not always as simple as, I saw somebody the other day, it was on Facebook, my kid did it, and finally she stood up for herself and she went up and punched this kid in the face and she got suspended. I'm willing to bet there's more to that story. So anyway, I hope this helps. Not taking up for the bullies in any case. If you can prove it, if we can prove it, and you don't have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt like a court, but if you have some kind of substantiating evidence, right, by all means, take the necessary action. And if they don't, then they're going to end up in trouble. And I got a million stories I could tell you on that. And I think I'm working on something to try and start bringing those stories back. So anyway, hope this helps. Have a great day.